Good evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 201st take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, a wonderful time to have our guest of honor on. Is going to be his third occurrence on the show. I'm so excited. Always great to have a great conversation with this gentleman here. But before we get to formal introductions, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible. And that, of course, is our sponsors. Tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Why everyone was so enamored about who was going to win the Bitcoin, and it was an exciting freestyle live. Don't get me wrong. But guess what's back? I'm so excited to see that the Barnsmokers are back, baby. Florida will be happening on May 13th through the 15th, in Pennsylvania from July 15th to the 16th, in Connecticut on August 12th and 14th. And don't forget to check out the Kentucky Barnsmoker later this year in the fall, September 30th through October 1st. These are fantastic, can't miss events. You want to check out, you want to get your tickets now, www.barnsmoker.com, and sign up for all four if you can. But I think my guest of honor will be a partial to particularly one of them, although I know he's a fan of all four as well. So let's get to formal introductions. This is our 201st take, and it's my privilege. It's my privilege. It's my pleasure to welcome in Mr. Jeff Borysiewicz of Corona Cigar and Florida Sun-Grown Farms. Jeff, how are we doing tonight?
How you doing, Bear? Thanks for having me on. I always like chit-chatting with you about everything about cigars and all the good stuff in the cigar world. And congratulations on 201 shows. 4 years, man. That's a nice little record you got there. So good job and congratulations.
Thank you very much. No, it's been a heck of a run. And I'm thrilled to keep it going. As you know, and from when we were talking in the green room, I'm not 100% today, but I'm still rocking and rolling. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. It's going to be fantastic. So I do want to talk about a couple of things right off the bat. Kind of just a couple. Well, I mean, there's literally, I don't even know if we're going to be able to get to everything, Jeff, because there were a lot of things that I wanted to talk with you about, but I'm so excited to have you back. But one of the things that actually caught my attention, was from just a few weeks ago. You were driving back from, Florida Sun-Grown Farms and there in Claremont, and you stumbled upon apparently a pretty horrific wreck, and you stopped and rendered aid and everything. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on that story, because I thought it was, first of all, not everybody does that. I think we'd all like to think we would do the right thing there or do, but I feel like more often than not, most people are just kind of living their busy lives and they're going on to the next thing. They might call 911, of course, or something like that if they weren't directly involved. But I mean, it was pretty brutal. And you actually made the decision to stop and render whatever aid you could. So I mean, walk us through what you actually saw and what happened. And
yeah, so for those who don't know the story, I was leaving the farm. It was in the afternoon, and there's a state highway that runs not too far from the farm, and it's heavily traveled by trucks and things like that. And there was a head-on collision with the car in front of me, hitting another, actually it was a pickup truck in front of me, head-on collision into a white little minivan. And the truck flipped over, and the lady was in the other lane, just shot across me and piled up into a fence. So you ask, how do you react to something like that? Probably when you're younger, you might think of just out of fear, hey, maybe I'll call 911 or just let other people deal with it. But once you become a father, my oldest boy's 16 now, and going through fatherhood, it teaches you, somebody like your kid or something falls or whatever, you got to go and help out. And also, as my father passed away a little over a year ago, and it's just the cycle of life, man. You become more mature and realize that, hey, you need to stop and do what you can. And in this case, for me, besides talking to the people on 911, they're trying to coach me on what to do. But anyway, this lady was obviously, she was screaming and crying and was terribly upset. and I knew where we were. It's a rural area, so we're probably about 30 minutes before anybody get there. So my job was just to make her feel like she's not alone, because she was alone, and not leave her abandoned on the side of the road. So listen, that's about, she's trapped in the car, but she wasn't. Um, the car was secure or whatever, but it was more of just offering comfort, because lady was hysterical and airbags went off and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so I guess the moral of the story is that as you get older, you when you see things like that, you need to take part in it, because we do live definitely in a society where a lot of people just keep going, or sometimes just whip out a damn cell phone just to get a video of carnage. And so we definitely don't want to be that way. So anyway, it's not something obviously pre-planned. It's the first time it's ever something like happened in front of me. But yeah, listen, I think anybody, especially if you're the only one, you'll probably do the right thing. So that's how that goes. And that's kind of what the advice to me is, with anybody, just, even if you have no whatever training on that, you still know how to comfort people, and make sure they don't feel like they're alone. Because trust me, 30 minutes when you're trapped in a car and in pain and stuff like that, I'm sure it felt like, well, she probably doesn't even remember it, but anyway, sure it felt like a much longer.
Sure, it felt like eternity.
Yeah. So that's what happened. And everybody just take each day. Remember, things can change real quickly. Could have been me instead of her. So anyway, that's what happened there.
I'm glad
that's
you were
why
there.
we enjoy the moments, smoke great cigars, and enjoy life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know everyone's really excited on the chipper note that I started the show on. I just thought I just thought it was really important to tell that story, because, like I said, not everyone does that. Not everyone stops, and you did.
Be the one that stops.
For sure. So, Jeff, I wanted to, we talked about some, like you said, smoke great cigars. I've got 3 cigars here that I'd like, it would honor me if you actually chose my cigar for tonight. So I think you're gonna like my choices. So I have the Tampa FSG by Davidoff. And I also have 2 newer cigars. We're going to talk a little bit about both of these tonight a little bit. The 20 Acre Farm Robusto from Drew Estate, and the 25th anniversary cigar celebrating Corona Cigar Company. This, I believe, is the shade. You had 3 versions of it. This is, and all 3 of these are obviously have FSG tobacco in them. So, whatever you'd like me to smoke, Jeff, it would honor me if you could pick my cigar for me tonight.
So while all 3 of those cigars are fantastic, I think just because it's the newest one out there, I'd like you to smoke that FSG Farm, the 20 Acre Farm Robusto.
Okay.
And get your feedback on that, because I'm smoking a 20 Acre Farm. This is the Bellicoso. This is a shape that they did for us for our 25th anniversary. But the blends are the same. But of course, each shape smokes a little different. So I want you to fire that one up. I look forward to your feedback on that too, because that's actually, I love that cigar, and I think you'll love it too. So for the folks too that saw those 3 selections, the Davidoff Tampa FSG is a fuller bodied cigar. So that one's going to be, if you're in the mood for something a little more powerful. The 20 Acre Farm is a very refined, complex cigar. I'll let Bear light it up before I say anything else on it. And then the 25th anniversary is a new one that we did with, it's a Corona Nicaraguan 25th anniversary. We have several versions of our Corona Nicaraguan cigars that we started back in 1999, actually 98. Oliva makes our original one. The 10th anniversary is with Aganorsa. The 20th anniversary is with Aganorsa with FSG. And then the 25th anniversary is made in the J.C. Newman factory in Nicaragua, also with FSG, but blending with their tobaccos, because Aganorsa has their huge selections of tobaccos they grow. And then J.C. Newman has tobaccos that primarily mostly from Oliva and others. So it gives a different blend, different flavor profile, even though they're all made in Nicaragua. But a factory across the street from another factory produces totally different cigars. So give that one a shot. Fire it up.
It's made at the Pensa, the 25th anniversary.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. Was that by design, Jeff? Because you have some terrific partnerships, obviously, with in particular, you have terrific partnerships all around, but even particular ones, the manufacturers that have taken some FSG and made projects with it.
It's totally by design. Okay. So here's what happens is that every factory has a flavor profile of the cigars they make, and that generally comes from the tobaccos that are in their warehouses. So when you get FSG in the factory with the blender of that factory, it's like a chef that has these ingredients that they've been using to make their existing blends, and then you give them another great ingredient to work with, and give them the freedom to come up with blends that they reflect on their palates. What we try to do is give them some guidance as far as strength. That's about the only guidance I want to give them. Is if I want it to be a real strong cigar, like Corona Intensa that Aganorsa makes, obviously that needs to be a strong cigar. So we'll tell them, blend that one nice, full-bodied, spicy cigar. Just kind of give them those parameters, and then they come up with the rest. But on the 25th, we did the 25th Nicaraguan from Jason Newman factory. That's got 3 different wrappers because they make cigars with Ecuadorian shade, Ecuadorian sun-grown, and then Brasilia Matafina Maduro. So that all of our Corona Nicaraguan 10th, 20th, and 25th all come in 3 different wrappers. So really, we just want to give them some parameters to work with and give that master blender freedom to come up with great blends, because he knows what tobaccos they have and what works well. And sometimes it can be as easy as, hey, this is our most popular blend that we use on X cigar. Let's blend FSG in that. And it's like having you might have this wonderful recipe for chili or something. You add one other ingredient to it that just really sets it off. So we leave that freedom up to them, and then we validate, of course, and give feedback. Most of the times when these guys come up with this stuff, they never just give us one blend. They always, for example, if you got 3 different wrappers, 3 different cigars, you're going to end up with 9 different blends to start working with, and then you can give them direction from there. But most of the times when you're starting off with great tobaccos anyway, and you're blending FSG in it, it's really not that difficult to come up with another great blend, because it's something totally unique. And so that's what I was just about to say. That's what we tell them to do. And Drew Estate, of course, with the 20-acre farm, you guys have, a lot of people have been to these factories, and if you haven't been in one of these cigar factories we're talking about, when we say they got a lot of tobacco in inventory, we're talking about warehouses that are like the size of a football field, just full of tobaccos that are aging, and they're all sourced from all different farms, all different regions. And so, that's like, I like to call that like the pantry of the chef's kitchen. And so these guys have some, we make sure we work with really good guys, good factories, good reputations, good quality tobaccos in their inventory. So then it's a matter of bringing another like all-star onto an NBA team or something.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to smoking this and sharing my thoughts here. But you mentioned we started talking about the cigar itself, but before we get into tonight's major point, which I had a unique take for this time, and we're going to go into that here in a little bit. But I do want to recognize while Florida has been open for quite some time, and I'm sure you had a fantastic year in 2021 celebrating it. For a lot of people, they may not have been aware that you celebrated your 25th anniversary last year. And was it everything you still wanted it to be, or like I said, we know that Florida's been open for a while. Were there any things that you weren't able to do because of, everything that's been going on with the last 2 years in the pandemic? Or?
Well, last year, Florida's been open for for almost a year. But we were also closed for almost 9 months. And I don't mean my stores being closed, but we were under a lot of restrictions. The bars had to be shut down for a while. There was all kinds of rules. You could buy a cigar, you could sit outside if it was in a to-go cup. There was just crazy rules. But you roll with the punches, and we did well. So it didn't really. It hindered some of the projects we're doing. Obviously, when the cigar making countries are locked up, that holds back a lot of projects that we have been working on. So, but that's all right. Honestly, I don't get upset because, like, listen, just roll with the punches, man. It is what it is. So if we have a 25th anniversary that comes out, a 25th anniversary project that happens to come out when we're 28 years old, it is what it is, So cigar guys understand. Yeah, I mean, this industry is known for, the Fuente family. That's their tagline, their motto: never rush the hands of time. And that's just the way it is when you're making great cigars. You can't force it. So listen, everything, we roll the punches, and I'm just glad we're in Florida because we have a great governor that's been real open-minded on this kind of stuff, and we were able to not only conduct business but kind of have a normal life with kids going to school and businesses being open. And it's really, we take it for granted. I don't want to say we take it for granted, but we forget that there are other parts of the country that, you see what's going on in Canada and stuff, and it's like, man, these guys are still locked up there. I forgot. And makes you feel bad for, I don't know how business could survive, and life certainly isn't that fun if you're restricted on what you can and can't do so much. But roll with it. That's all I can say.
Yeah. No, and you certainly did. You and there, some other noted retailers. It seemed like, one of the benefits that I'll say, in light of all the restrictions that were placed on you, and God forbid, you had 4 stores, 2 different cities, 3 different counties, 1 state, all telling you different things. Like, that was a nightmare, I'm sure. But for the most part, restrictions notwithstanding, I feel like most retailers did really well from the very beginning because people started smoking more. At least there was a lot more. Sales weren't the issue. There were a lot of other issues, but sales of cigars weren't necessarily the issue, at least in the very,
Well, for us, if we didn't have coronacigar.com, it would have been much worse because, the whole curbside thing, and it's just not, you can do it, but most cigar guys don't like that. They want to come in the store, right? They want to pick out their stuff, and it's kind of cumbersome trying to order over the phone, hey, grab these cigars and meet me at the curb. So anyway, we offered it, but coronacigar.com is what saved our ass during that time because, while the retail stores were way down and there was no bar sales to speak of, the online sales picked up to make up for those lost sales. So it was good that we were in that position. And I think a lot of retailers realized they needed to get an online store too, to make sure your customers have a way of getting those cigars. And so every business, I think, that could do online business definitely learned they need to get in it. And then a couple other things we did too. We were still allowed to sell. It's funny, during the lockdowns, it's like selling booze was considered a essential business.
Essential business.
You just couldn't drink it in the store. So
couldn't pour it in a glass. Give them the bottle.
Yeah. So what happened is there don't forget, our liquor suppliers were like, weren't getting orders either. So they started, we came up with some creative packages, and we sell lots of high-end bourbons, and we have tons of single barrels that we do. So, a lot of companies were like, listen, sell these packages to go. And everybody wants to cherry pick our Blantons and, Eagle Rare and these harder to find whiskeys. So what they would say is, listen, package that together, but you're also going to get a Wheatley vodka. You're going to get some of these Fireballs and stuff like that, they're kind of hanging on like a Christmas tree, but it allowed people to buy whiskey, and they were able to get some good stuff too. But you had to take a couple bottles that were, give them to your neighbor, somehow use them for a party or something like that. But that's kind of how we're able to keep some of those. You had to get creative. You had to figure out ways to keep everything going. We kept everybody employed, every single person. So that's how we did it, just figuring out ways out of it. And, let's hope those days are behind us.
Yeah, here's hoping for that. So Jeff, we're going to do, like I said, we're going to jump into a lot of topics tonight. And there's actually something a little unusual take that I'm going to take on each section that we talk about. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into tonight's major point, which is sponsored by, as always, by Protocol Cigars, Power of the P. Tonight's major point is brought to you by the people, cigar people, the people who know everything about a lifetime of service. Protocol Cigars is more than just pool parties and good times. Well, maybe it is. But behind the fun is a motivation for service, a motivation for giving back, from the original Protocol Blue to the latest release in the Lawman series, Bass Reeves. Protocol has always been about honor, passion, and yes, the people. It's what their life's work has been and always will be about. Power of the P, Protocol Cigars. So Jeff, wanted to we talked about your 25th anniversary and everything, but what I wanted to do is, with some of these topics that we're talking about, I wanted to also ask your advice. I've asked your advice on numerous occasions over the years, and you've always been really great about giving it out. I've gotten that same feedback from a lot of people. You're always willing to lend a word for someone who wants, or an ear for someone who wants someone to listen to or wants some advice. You've seen a lot, you've done a lot, and you've had accomplished many things. And you may not say it, but I will. You're a tremendous success. So that being said, we're gonna on each of these topics, we're gonna ask some advice behind it. So we talked about the 25th anniversary. So if a retailer came up to you and said, hey, I'm celebrating 10, 15, 20, 25 years, what advice would you give them about celebrating their milestone?
Well, if you can get an anniversary cigar, that's number one for sure. And then also, I'm not saying necessarily throw a huge party where you spend tons of money, but I think that there's something you should do for your customers and let them know that how much you appreciated it. It's interesting. I still, just this Saturday, yesterday, had customers that were talking to, hey man, I used to buy cigars, or when you had the auto shop. Now that's the genesis of the company. I mean, that's like that's in 1996, and that's really something special when you hear that kind of thing. So you definitely should get a cigar made for it. It's a celebratory occasion. So I know that the problem is that, remember I said we've got 25th anniversary projects that are going to probably come out maybe even when they're 30 years old, but you can't ask a manufacturer well, you can, but you can't get upset when they don't deliver, when they can't keep their own cigars on your shelf, which is what we've been seeing for the last year. There's been, our stores have always had cigars, but you're probably hitting about 90% success ratio, meaning that on an item that you would either order or look for in a store. So if you look at like an entire shelf or aisle, we have an entire aisle of Padron, we have an entire aisle of Davidoff, and all these other cigars. And so, yeah, you're going to find out there's a lot of empty slots there. But so while these guys can't keep their own supply chain full, because they had tons of challenges in Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic as well. So you don't get upset when the manufacturer says, hey, I just can't do it right now. So, all right, wait. So if you got to do your 10th anniversary cigar, and when you're actually 12th anniversary, that's fine. Roll with it. I just, be glad you got it, and then sell the heck out of it.
I think it's so cool that you've, like we were just talking about, it was by design. You've selected these anniversary cigars, and you've done them with companies that you've had great relationships. And you have other exclusives. Other companies have made cigars for you over the years, different companies and stuff. So I mean, again, your humidor is fraught with examples of that. So I think that the that if someone could have the ability to build that relationship with someone, if you're going to last 10 years in this business, 15, 20 years, there's going to be a company that'll make a cigar for you and be happy to do it. And so I think that's great advice. I wish more companies did it, because I think that would be really something to celebrate. And I think that would be something that, customers like you were talking about, you said you talked to people that have been around since 96. I mean, there's customers that have been around these stores the same time, like that would be, I remember when I came into this store when it was X, and I'm feeling kind of nostalgic now, Jeff, because actually yesterday, you were mentioning last night, yesterday, the sun was set on the very first cigar shop that I ever walked into and later worked at, which was Pop Safari, Cigars, Fine Wines in Fort Worth, Texas. So sad day. The proprietor actually passed away last year, and they kept it going for a while, and it was it's really sad to see it go, because that was a piece of my personal history as well as a history of Fort Worth too. So it's
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was surprised at how well they did through everything too, through the pandemic and stuff. And when Perry passed away, it was pretty sweet. Because I know that he was suffering for quite a long time, and he was in a lot of ways, he was, I wouldn't say like a father to me, but definitely a father figure, and he did a lot for me, and I'll never forget it and never forget him, because he was an incredible man. So I'm really bringing all the good stuff tonight, the feel good moments, I gotta tell you. But we were talking about these relationships that you've built. Okay, so like specifically, let's talk about FSG Tobacco. Drew Estate, Davidoff, JC Newman, Aganorsa. I mean, these are some major power players in this industry, and that's a credit to you, Jeff. And I don't think he'll mind me saying this, considering he said it pretty much in his own words in a post earlier this week, I believe. But now there's another project in the works with FSG Tobacco, and that's with Steve Saka and Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, who's considerably smaller in terms of production. Get with up against those other folks that I had mentioned. What I know you have a great relationship with Steve. Was that it? That it was just that great relationship, or was there something else that we were like, hey, we need to get together on a partnership. We need to do something with FSG Tobacco.
Well, I've known Steve for a long time, and so whenever he goes to Nicaragua, if he decides to drive from New Hampshire to Miami, he's always going to stop by, and we're going to spend some time together. So he's been out to the farm several times, and the last time he was there, we had tobacco that was in cartons, and that means it's already pulled from the barn, packed, ready to export to Nicaragua. And he's like, man, can I get just like 100 pounds of this? And I said, yeah, we can do that. And so he picked the primings that he liked, and so we packed a special carton of that for him, and these go to work on it. Now it really goes back to Steve is he's the captain of his ship, and he works with really quality people, and Steve's a real stickler for everything, every detail. So let him. It's another thing. We don't give him any guidance. Hey, he wants a mild, medium, strong. No, none of that. It's like Steve. It's a reflection of his name and his company and his brand and his flavor profile. So we once he gets the tobacco, it's in his hands, and let's see it's almost like, they do these celebrity chef cook-offs or whatever. They say, here's the ingredients. Let's see what each of you come up with on your dish. So let's see what Steve comes up with on his dish. And everybody, I think everybody that smokes any cigars knows this guy knows what he's doing. So we're totally confident. And it's one of those things too. There's no timetable on it. There's none at all. It takes a year, it takes 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is. The only criteria is that the product comes out. It's got to be fantastic. So if it's nothing about time or anything like that. So we'll see what he comes up with. I'm sure he'll come up with something great. We did personally, like his Sin Compromiso cigar is phenomenal.
Right.
There's an exclusive Elefante that he does for Corona Cigar. It's a very large cigar, and it's just one of those things. I do. You mentioned the other folks that we work with too. It's so much easier. You don't have to micromanage anything when you're working with great companies like you mentioned. They know it. These guys are freaking professional. They know what they're doing, right? They're not only they well established and big and produce great cigars. So with that in place, it's just really it's very easy to work with that kind of talent. And also, it's a two-way street. They know that we're easy to work with, and they don't have to worry about if they start a project that a year later Corona Cigar is not going to be there to accept the cigars or whatever.
Right.
It's not one of those things. So because that, believe it or not, that's an issue sometimes. People
sure.
will do a special limited edition cigar for a certain city or something like this, and then the retailer can't sell them or can't afford them or whatever. So those are some of the things that happen. But I enjoy these projects as well. We spend a lot of time growing a tobacco and a lot of work that goes into it. So it's like having that candy that comes out of that factory, man. You want to eat it. And so for us, that's it. We love tasting those cigars that come out, and it's really cool when you smoke them on the farm, because that's the genesis of the product. And you come full circle on it. So it's real cool.
You mentioned that how like the reason you work with these different factories is they all have this signature profile, right? And so to that point, and I mean, are they all uniquely special because of that, or is it the collective collaboration of it all, just being able to, like, do you ever sit back and just say like, wow, like all of these fantastic factories have made cigars for my company, and it's just this collective collaboration of collaborative joy, if you will, or are they each individually just very special in their own way?
Each one's individually special, because each factory is like, it's like a different family member. They're all unique. So each one is kind of like it's really none of them kind of mixed together in my head when we're dealing with it. So and all the products none of them are similar. You know what I'm saying? There's actually, the similarity is in the let's take, for example, Aganorsa. So Aganorsa makes their Corona 20th anniversary, but they also make Army of Angels, and they make Intensa. Now, if you take our 20th anniversaries that from Aganorsa, if you want to go one step fuller bodied, you go to the Army of Angels. If you want to go 2 steps fuller body, you go to the Intensa. And so that's why, but they're still going to have a flavor profile, to me, that's distinctly Aganorsa, because they grow all their own tobaccos. Their seed variety is the brothers and sisters of our seed variety. So there is a signature flavor of Aganorsa tobacco. Just like I think Davidoff has a signature flavor of the tobaccos that they use. And then, the Pensa factory of JC Newman has a very a unique flavor too. Theirs doesn't taste anything like Drew Estate. I mean, let's face it, their biggest selling cigar, box cigar, is going to be your Brick House. I don't think a Brick House tastes like anything that Drew Estate makes.
No,
and I don't think,
accurate.
you know what I'm saying? I don't think there's stuff that comes from Aganorsa that tastes like Drew Estate. So, so that's the way it is with our cigars that use FSG as well. Even though it's a component within the cigar, they totally taste different. Especially like FSG, the original from Drew Estate with the Brazilian Aripiraca wrapper, and then the box press limited edition with the Connecticut broadleaf. I mean, just those 2 cigars, both out of Drew Estate, those 2 cigars are totally different. Right. Even though they're both FSGs, you smoke the box press with the broadleaf, it's a much stronger cigar than the FSG with the Brazilian Maduro wrap.
I love that expression, the box press, the trunk. Oh, it's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So good.
So it depends on what I'm in the mood for. If I want one stronger, I'll smoke the box press Toro. If I want something a little milder, I go with the traditional round.
So you were just mentioning about the FSG, the original FSG release that Drew Estate did. So recent announcement from the company is that they did away with a couple of SKUs, and then they took the FSG tobacco away from national release and brought it back to just Corona as the exclusive for you. While this was certainly a positive for you to have exclusivity to it, I mean, what were your feelings? I mean, was it a mixed feeling? Like,
Yeah, there's the thing is they didn't do away with any sizes, so all the sizes are still there. We sell them all. I do believe that the limited edition box press will continue to go to when it's released. I think the DDRP retailers will be able to get that when it comes out. But they really wanted to have a cigar in their portfolio on the national side. With like 20 Acre Farm is totally different than the FSG. It's a totally different flavor profile. Doesn't taste like anything in the Drew Estate, categories or cigars that they make. So it fills it allows them to go after a type of cigar smoker that likes that flavor profile that they weren't necessarily hitting before. So that was the idea of that. And they wanted also to make sure it looked distinctively different, so that it's easily recognizable. This is a totally different cigar with a totally different flavor profile. So we're really excited. They really, wish I were classied up the brand as well. The packaging on it's incredible. The swag that matches it. I mean, when you put the ashtray next to the box and the cutter and the lighter, this is really high end stuff. They did a tremendous job of linking all of that together. So we're really excited about it. And Drew Estate's always been a great company to work with. We've been with them since day one. Actually, it was 2 years after we opened, but I mean, to me, it feels like from day one. But they've always been stayed true to who they are, and I like that. I like dealing with. What's interesting when they got bought by Swisher, I think what really made a big difference too is that Swisher is still a family-owned company. It's not publicly traded, and it's U.S. based, and I think that makes a big difference. And they understand that Drew Estate still needs to function like Drew Estate did, and they've done a really good job in not only being able to keep the, let's say, the personality of the company, but improve on it as well. And so I really like that, because a lot of times once companies get sold, man, they change where you don't even recognize them anymore. They lose sometimes, 50 years where the legacy gets bought, and then it's like, nobody's there anymore that was part of the original company, and things just become, columns on a spreadsheet and all that other kind of stuff. And long term, it always, generally it erodes away.
No, I think that's a very important point. I think Drew Estate has really done a really good job of keeping their identity. It's not really lost. Have there been some changes? Sure. I would say more overwhelmingly positive than, towards the negative side. I think they've done a fantastic job of keeping that. I still recant the story. I love it. Literally the day it got sold, people would come into our humidor at Michael's in Euless and pick up a Liga and like, oh, it tastes different. It's like, come on, man. Like, just stop. Right. Come on. But to that point, I think, like you said, they've put some really good people in those roles to make a difference. Because if you look at Glenn Wolfson and you look at Jonathan Drew, those two men probably couldn't be more different.
Right.
But Glenn allows the company to kind of follow that Jonathan Drew, Marvin Samel kind of origin story, and like I said, it's still been able to keep its identity, and he recognized that. And under his leadership, I think it's been really great of what they've been able to do.
So let me give you a good example of that. What happens there? That's why I said, like when Swisher bought it, there's some actually good things, because when you have Glenn's a very structured CEO, and that's kind of sometimes what when you have a lot of creative juices flowing in the company, sometimes it's hard to manage, and sometimes you got to kind of bring focus back. And Glenn's been really good at Dristy being a great operator. So that was a big plus. And you know what? Dristy did a great job during the pandemic with all the stuff they did.
Oh, absolutely.
They really out of everybody, they did the best. And other companies could have done it. There's big companies out there like theirs, right? And they kind of missed that boat, or maybe they just, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But anyway, it's a good example of how when they got a good team, and these this Bitcoin they just gave away, and then all the stuff leading up to it, in the production of their shows and the videos, there's a lot of effort that went into it. So and they were able to zig, especially for the size of the company. They were able to zig when this the landscape changed. So good job.
No, absolutely. So we got to focus here a little bit more on the 20-acre farm as I'm smoking it down, and really enjoying this cigar, Jeff. I know. I hope you're as pleased with it as a lot of people tend to be with it. I could taste the FSG. I love FSG tobacco. You know this. There really isn't a cigar. I think I've had everything you've made, or that has been made with FSG. I'm trying to think if I haven't, and I've liked all of them, and because I love the tobacco.
You've had our farm rolls, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the best way to taste FSG at its core, mm-hmm. because that's a rolled with tobacco that's cured on the farm, but has not gone through any sorting or fermentation or anything like that. So once you smoke a farm roll and you smell it too, especially the aroma, that's like the DNA of that cigar. When you smoke that, it's like, man, you can pick it up in all these other cigars. And that's what's really, that's why we did that farm roll, so that, because that's how we smoke tobacco on the farm after it goes through its curing process. We will roll up some farm rolls, light it up, check the burn quality, the ash quality. In the farm rolls, we actually age the tobacco in a bourbon barrel. There's actually bourbon barrels, quite a few of them, and we do that for 2 to 3 years just to put age in it. But it never goes through a bulking or fermentation of the what we call the sweating of the tobacco. It doesn't do any of that. So it gives it some of that like straight off the farm type of flavor. Mm-hmm. And so that's a good way to, once you smoke that, then you can pick up, oh yeah, man, I can taste the FSG in a 20-acre farm. I can taste it in the FSG Vedro estate. I can taste it in the Aganorsa products. And you just so that's why I really think that's pretty cool. That cigar takes it right back to the core ingredient.
So the question remains, so this industry is really bad at keeping secrets.
Well, not always, not with what we did.
Well, exactly. That's my point. Like, this wasn't on the radar. Like, I mean, this really caught me off guard. They did the freestyle lives and they give us the sneak peek of it. And they're like, hey, smoke in, tell us what you think, blah, blah, which it was, again, like you said, was a great way to get community involvement. But with the Underground 10, like, I knew, and a lot of us knew, we're guessing that was part of the Underground project, right? The Underground world or family or whatever you want to call it. This, I totally threw me for a loop. I thought, like I said, because I can taste it pretty good. I thought I tasted FSG. I was like, I wonder if it's something else with Jeff. I said that'd be really cool, but I mean, it was more fleeting than anything. I'm not gonna say I called it because I didn't. But it caught a lot of us off guard. I mean, how'd y'all keep this a secret? Like, seriously, this is in this industry.
Listen, I can keep a secret. That's the difference. And then it goes back to like Glenn Wolfson and the structure and Drew Estate. Now they're disciplined, and they know when they're working on this project, because there's some, listen, when you start doing major marketing campaigns, that freestyle live kit, there was a lot that went into that. You know, you got the leather case, you have the packaging, you have the cigars. So you can't have guys in the company that are going to blow it. You know what I'm saying? Because then it blows the whole thing. You know. So I think that's a hat tip to Drew Estate and the guys that were involved in it, making sure. Listen, you know, don't talk about this because there's a plan. And so that's, you know, it's actually harder to keep the secret of Drew Estate than is it Corona Cigar, because I can keep it real under the, you know, not even tell anybody within the company what's going on. So that's how we were able to pull that off, and I'm glad that it did. It was pretty cool. There were a couple of people that called it, and that was pretty cool too. So, and the cigars, the ones that are in the boxes, that they've got the cedar on it, which I really love because
I was going to ask you about this.
I was able to get, you know, got the packaging where it was already done and everything else, and the cedar just adds a whole nother layer of complexity to the flavor. Which
okay, so you and I agree on this. A lot of people think it's aesthetic, and I'm like, it's not.
No, it adds a lot of flavor to the cigar. It goes back to, you know, the days of, you know, the Cuban cigars wrapped in the cedar wrap too, and you know, they were always done in cedar cabinets, and a lot of cigars were aged in those cedar. When I say cabinet, that's a slide top box made of Spanish cedar. You know, nowadays you have, because there was a shortage of cedar, you know, your boxes are made of MDF material or other woods that aren't aromatic. So when you put that cedar sleeve on it, for sure, especially Spanish cedar sleeve, it definitely adds. It's like a seasoning. I mean, it really is. It's like having, you know, barbecue ribs and putting a rub on it too. So it totally makes a difference, especially when you first light the cigar too, because it's kind of like one of the first things that hits your nose, and that's kind of, you know, jump starts your palate of what's coming. So yeah, it makes a difference, and I think it's a great touch. And here's the other thing too. There were some companies that would use cedar to hide blemishes in the wrappers, and or off colors. Now that's not the case at all. If you look at any of these cigars, you pull the sleeve off and it's the wrappers, like top quality. So that's another important thing too, because some people have used you know, wrapped cigars in cedar because the aesthetics weren't there. That's not the case of this. This is a top shelf, top notch cigar, and the cedar's added for that flavor and aroma.
Now, so here's where the advice comes in. So you've kind of danced around it a little bit tonight when we were talking about letting these people do it. And I heard you in another interview talking about 20 Acre Farm specifically, and really just kind of letting go and letting Willie Herrera do his thing.
Yeah.
So the advice is, like, I mean, how hands-on should a brand owner be with their cigars? Because I mean,
well, it depends. In this case here, this was a specifically everything from the concept to the blending and everything else was specifically created for a certain category that the Drew Estate family of cigars wasn't touching on. Remember, they got tons of Maduro cigars. You know, look at all the Liga Privadas and the Undercrowns and things like that. Really, other than Northern Crown Shade, there's nothing else in that line. So this was designed to give them a pillar of that premium luxury, complex shade cigar that's got flavor, but also not overpowering. So that was the idea behind it. So that's Willie's wheelhouse. He knows what to do. And so yeah. And again, it goes back to the same thing. If you're working with professionals, you don't have to get involved. I mean, you know, if you got an all-star team of guys out there, you don't get in their way. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, absolutely. No, if I'm not sure what I would do if I ever had the opportunity to actually work and with some of these people and actually build my own cigar. I don't know if I could contain my excitement.
Well, excitement's one thing, and honest feedback is also very important. But remember, these companies they're professionals, so blends don't usually even get to my thing, to me, until they've already gone through, you know, people at the factory level, people at the company level, by the time they get to me, they've already gone through a lot of scrutiny.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So bringing it back to Florida Sun Grown Farm, where you spend a lot of your time, there have been a lot of, I would say that since the last time we had you on, Jeff, there's been a lot of developments there. So starting with some of the way that you're diversifying the land. So, I mean, you've got cattle now, and you also produce honey as well,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what went into those decisions? Because we all know that Florida Sun Grown Farm is a passion project for you, and you've said that a number of times. So what went into those decisions as far as diversifying the land a little bit for other than tobacco?
So I'll start with the honey. That was totally accidental. And when you have a farm, you got to be a good neighbor, and you're part of a community. And especially when you hold these giant barn smokers, you got to make sure your neighbors like you, because you don't want them calling the cops on you and all this other stuff. So anyway, a neighbor next to us, he has bees and makes honey and all that stuff. In one year, the tobacco he let flower, and he says, Jeff, my honey is unbelievable. They love that tobacco. You know, they like produce double the amount of honey, super flavorful, super sweet, and it's got a different taste to it. And he was selling it, sort of like a local yokel type of thing, right? And I said, listen, I'll just buy it all. Whatever you normally sell it for, I'll just buy it all, and then we'll sell it in our stores. And so we've had that relationship for a couple of years now. So that wasn't something that was planned. It's just something that happened. And you'll find this a lot of times in business or in anything. As you go down that road of life, there's always things that come out. And when you see those, you need to try and take that opportunity and roll with it. So, we created the labels and the jars and all the other stuff. And it's a real, it's a legit product coming from that farm. If you want to, you pass by the farm, you see the guy there, you want to talk to him, there's the hives, just don't go hit them because you get stung. But, they're there. And so now the beef cattle came as one of the challenges of having any farm is, what do you do when you're not growing? In the first couple of years, we were only growing a spring crop because traditionally that's what they always did in Florida. But, I'm like, man, these guys in Cuba start their crops in the fall. And you always do tobacco based on rain. You want to do it when it's not raining, and you want to do it when it's not going to freeze. So in Cuba, obviously, they don't have a problem with freeze, but they have hurricanes and rainy seasons. So they grow it in our winter, if you will. So they start their tobacco is growing right now, probably finishing up some of the harvest. So I'm like, well, let's do a fall crop, and let's see how it works. And it turned out phenomenal. And then one year we had a problem where we lost our spring crop. I'm like, wow, thank goodness we know we can do a fall crop. So after that, really changed our mentality of stop growing a big spring crop, cut it in half, and just grow that second crop. This way, you can kind of keep your farm working year round. Because if you grow a spring crop, what do you do with everybody that works for you in the fall? You know what I mean? You can't just have everybody standing around. And then it's like, if you don't have work for them, it's like having to rebuild a team from scratch. You need guys that have worked there before. So that's why we did the spring, fall, and then in between, we've got the cattle going on. And that was something else to just be able to make sure that you can keep people working 12 months out of the year. So that's how the beef cattle came about. And then personally, I really enjoy the beef cattle. It's something that's, some people, when they're done with work, go to the gym or do yoga or whatever the hell. For me, my brain cleanse is going out and doing some, fixing fence or mowing pastures, things like that. So I actually can do a lot of thought. I come up with some cool stuff as I'm driving a tractor for hours and hours and hours. You can really just focus. So anyway, so that's how that came about. And then during COVID, we were always selling our calves to the local auction. But during COVID, there was meat shortages and stuff like that. I'm like, this is crazy. We got plenty of beef out there. So we started with a local processor and started, pulling some of our best steers and raising them for the attention of us actually having them slaughtered and packaged. And so that's what we started doing about 2 years ago, and that's worked out really well too. So that's something that we do to just I really like these Red Meat Lover Club things. We've done several of those dinners. We got another one coming up in Tampa. Evan bought a whole steer, and he's got some awesome chefs. I mean, these guys do all kinds of stuff with, you get the brisket going, you get the ribs going, you get the tomahawks going, you got meatballs going. They do sliders, they do everything. It's really cool. So, and he always ties it up to a charity too. So it's always a great event. So that's kind of how the farm has evolved. And then also the other thing, once you have a bunch of cows, you got to feed them in the wintertime here. So now we got a hay operation. So we grow our hay and that's all part of it too. So a lot of this stuff just comes naturally, and that's where we're at today.
How many head of cattle have you had at any one time?
About 400.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
All on 20 acres.
Size.
All on 20 acres, really?
No, 20 acres just the farm, the tobacco farm.
Okay.
No, the ranching operation is about 600 acres.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it adjacent to FSG or
the hayfields across the street?
Okay.
There's one ranch down the road, so they're all within 30-minute drive each other.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, man. 400 cat. Yeah, no, that sounded really big to me. I was like, there's no way it's a 20 acre. Oh no. Man. No. Well, that's because that's what I was thinking, Jeff, because I could say like I saw you diversifying with these different things. I was just like, I've been to that farm, and 20 acres is a lot of space. Don't get me wrong, but you also need a lot of space if you're gonna have cattle and things like that. I was like, oh, he probably can't be producing that much cattle.
No, you need about 2 acres per. All our stuff. The cows here, they're all grass fed, so in the wintertime you feed them hay. So you need about two minimum of 2 acres per cow, but then you gotta feed them hay in the wintertime. So you gotta have a hay field for that too, or you gotta buy it. But anyway, the meat industry is pretty tough. These cowboys and ranchers we're right now, the industry's getting screwed by the big packers, and they're trying to fix that. But anyway, that's a whole nother show.
No, I know you've been a huge advocate for that, and you've done some really great work with the farming community in Florida in general, and we're gonna get to that here in just a little bit. So, but so before I did do that, we talked about the farm rules earlier, mm-hmm. and how that's how you really get the taste and the aroma and the real feel of that. Well, you guys are starting to you started with the 99 Corojo, and now you're starting to introduce the 2012 Corojo. So from your perspective, like how is that? I mean, they're different, right? I mean, it's the same seed, different strain. Is it similar enough to be similar, or do they have differences that are really notable?
So here's what we found. The 2012, that was developed in Cuba. They were, the strain that they were always using there was a Corojo 99, but they kept running into a problem with black shank there. So they need to come up with more of a disease resistant variety, because Cuba grows a lot of tobacco kind of natural. So they don't have access to, fungicides and things like that to combat the black shank problem. So Cuba is the epicenter for hybrid and tobacco seed research. So I was over there during a Festival of Habanos, I don't know, probably 3-4 years ago. And that's what the guys were growing. It was like their first year with it. And I held back from planting any of it because I wanted to see how they were doing and how the taste was. And then Eduardo Fernandez planted a big crop of it as well. So once I saw that the Cubans were using it, and now they're actually in cigars that probably from 2 years ago, Crow 2012 has been in their cigars, and the market really didn't notice. And that was, I went to this seminar where the guy that develops all the seed research, he says the big thing they wanted was yield and disease resistance, but the taste had to be the same. So, and they felt they got it, but the market is really the true test. So no one really even noticed in the Cuban cigars that they were switching to 2012. So after I, saw other guys using it for a couple of years, I'm like, all right, let's go ahead and change it. So we planted it, and it kind of performed the same way as our existing seed did. The first year I grew it, but that's because we had we had a funny year in the winter there, where it was kind of like the cold was making the plants kind of stop growing, and then they grow again. And you get another cold front and stuff. But this season, when we planted it, I noticed the difference between a 2012 and a 99. The leaves are bigger. The leaves are at least an inch to inch and a half on average bigger, which is good, because Corojo is traditionally, that's the smallest leaf there is. When you go to tobacco, if it's Sumatra or broadleaf and all this other stuff, they're huge. Corojo is a small leaf. Criollo is wider, so it's the worst yielding seed variety out there. So the fact that Corojo 2012 yields a little more pounds per acre is a plus. And I'm not even worried about pounds per acre. I like longer leaves, because if you don't have some long leaves in there, you can't make Churchills. That's the issue. When it comes to wrapper on a cigar, you need at least 7-10-inch leaf to be able to get, and sometimes even longer, to get some Churchills out of them. So that was good to see that we're getting longer leaves. So the Newmans will, because they use it on the Americans, they're like, man, we need some longer leaves to make these Churchills. So anyway, they definitely will get it this year.
Nice. So, some of these changes in your operation have been organic. Some of them have been by accident. Some of them have been by design. So the advice we want to ask you, Jeff, as a farmer and a rancher, why and how should a farmer or rancher go about diversification? Should it be the mixed approach that you've taken, or should it be a little bit more precise and planned out?
I think you got to be diversified, because no matter what, things can change. And again, diversification off the first thing came, going from 2 crops a year instead of 1 was because of 1 year we lost an entire crop. So, we don't have crop insurance. There's no way to get it, because that's done through the Department of Agriculture in your state. And we're the only farm in Florida that grows cigar tobacco. So we're self-insured, if you will, or anything happens, it's feast or famine, it's us. So, I think necessity is anything else, but also one thing about the farming community, it's always about what's grown in your area. There's a reason, because if we didn't have a cattle market up the road, I wouldn't be growing cows. I mean, how do you sell your calves if you don't have a local stockyard where they're doing a cattle auction every week? So that's part of what co-ops are for, what farm communities are for. So, you got to grow what's done in the area.
Now, I've heard you mention this a number of times, that the state of Florida has been really instrumental in helping you with just the whole farming operation. Like you've been able to lean on them when certain issues arise and stuff like that, and they're more than willing to lend a helping hand. Do you think that's indicative of most state agencies from what you've heard? I know, because I know you're really connected in this industry too, or is that pretty unique to Florida?
No, that's all over the country, because the crop science is where you get to lean on the state agriculture guys. It's usually through a university, like I don't know if that's Green Bay or is that Georgia hat you got on?
It's Green Bay.
Okay, so Georgia, the University of Georgia is basically the agriculture school in Georgia. Florida's University of Florida, and what that does, the farmers in the state get to lean on their PhDs and their scientists and everything else. So anything from plant disease to, and now remember, things can happen that don't have an answer, which is what's happened in Florida with there's something called citrus greening. We've lost a tremendous amount of citrus in the state of Florida, because there's a virus that's killing the trees, and they don't have an answer for it, but the state's working on it, trust me. But for us, anything from soil sampling to tissue sampling to pathogen identification to weed control, you name it, whatever. These guys, the resources are there, and they're free of charge too, or I should say they're taxpayer funded. So what happens is because in a state like Florida, agriculture, the most profitable crop to plant in the state of Florida is houses. So you're constantly losing farms and farmers. So the state Department of Ag, you're like a new customer when they're losing customers. So that's why the resources are generally there, and they're happy to help you because they need to keep their funding going. And if they don't have like quote customers, it's hard to justify your funding when the state goes through its budget. So that's why they've been real helpful. It's unlike most agencies in the state. Most agencies, when a guy from the government comes, as a business owner, you're like, oh man, I can, this is going to be a pain in the ass. This guy's going to, this, that, and the other. They're never there. That's saying, hey, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. It's like a joke, right? So, but the Department of Agriculture has been really good.
Yeah, help who?
Right.
Well, awesome. Well, Jeff, I'm really excited about all the development, as are you and all your fans. Real big excited about all the developments going on at FSG and everything. I'm really excited. I haven't I've had some of the honey, absolutely outstanding. I love honey. I have not had any of the beef. That will be fixed at some point. I'm really excited about that too. How can one get FSG beef?
Right now, we just sell it locally because the area where we finish the steers is part near where the tobacco is. So at any one time, we'll have 8-10 animals there, and we go through probably one a month about. But you got to buy the way it works, you got to buy half the cow. So it's generally sold. We just sell that locally. But the best way to enjoy is actually come to one of our burgers and bourbon events or a red meat lover club event, because that's when we're cooking it up. So we do those throughout the year. I'll cook a ton of FSG burgers and we'll either have Woodford Reserve or Old Forester out there and pairing it with different bourbons, and it's and pairing it with FSG cigars. So that's always fun. And like I said, Red Meat Lovers Club that's the gourmet one. That's where it's like the high-end steakhouse meets I don't know if you have Texas to Brazil there, but like a churrascaria where they got all these different cuts, right? Absolutely. So that's kind of like what they do. It's pretty cool, and like Texas brisket mixed into it. So it's really cool.
Nice. Definitely mark your calendars for some of those events and get down and try some FSG beef. That's fantastic. So, Jeff, it's been a while since you've been on, and we've got 2 new segments. One that you're aware of. We talked about a charity, and we'll be introducing that here in just a second. But this is a new one that it's been around for a while, but this is your first participation in it. And so this one's a little bit different. With a little different take on it. Now, this is our One Must Go segment. And as always, it's brought to you by United Cigars, as is our guest tonight. Jeff Borysiewicz is also sponsored by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron line. So smoke one today and start living united, including, we're talking about shop exclusives. There is an Atabey that is sold exclusively at Corona Cigars. So check that out. I've had it. Again, fantastic cigar. So really excited here. So Jeff, this is how the One Must Go works. I give you 3 options and you've got to get rid of one. Now, if I just gave you the choices here, this could be kind of offensive. Not that you're one to take offense typically, but this could be kind of offensive because it'd be like almost asking you to pick one of your kids, and that's not what I'm doing here. So we're going to take a little bit of a different angle here. We're taking the Tampa store out of it because that's a different city, different animal and everything. But you started in Orlando, right? You started there, and then you open. So there's the downtown Orlando store, Sand Lake, which I've been to, and Lake Mary. All your stores there in the greater Orlando area. And so if I had to say that, so the question is, if one of these does not truly represent what you originally thought when you were starting, like you said, when you were starting out of your garage with Corona Cigar and you were doing mail order and everything, if you thought one day there's no way I would do X, which one of those stores would have to go in terms of being part of that grand plan?
None of them. I just renewed the lease on the downtown store. I just, so we're in these things. So no, we do a lot of due diligence before we open a store. So none of them. I honestly, I mean, if that was the case, we have closed the store before. I closed the Ocoee store. That was like the stepping stone, getting out of my house and actually having it in a building. So no, but Sand Lake is the original big one too. Actually, the downtown store is bigger than Sand Lake store, but I like Sand Lake store is the one that's it's like my home base, and it's where more of the customers, because that's been open since 2002. So, but all of them, including Tampa, will be renewing that lease over there as well. So, no, I can't get rid of any of them. That'd be like chopping off an arm.
Right. No, that's exactly what I say. Like, it's be asking you to pick one of your kids. No. So here's where I was kind of going with this. Like, do they all have I mean, with any store, Corona or not, like it seems like most stores always have, you can always go in, they have their identity. These are all Corona stores. Like, do they all have their own different identity, or are they really cohesive? Because
they have their own identity, especially I would say the downtown Orlando store. That's in an urban environment. I mean, that is on Main Street. So if there's a parade going down through Orlando, it's right in front of the store. Halloween, when there's like 30,000 people in costume in downtown Orlando, it's right in front of the store. City Hall's right, you can throw a rock and hit it. So that's an urban setting. Nightclubs around and everything else. A lot of good people watching there. The other two stores, Heathrow and Sand Lake, are quite similar. Those are more of neighborhood ones. Actually, what makes Sand Lake unique, it's a neighborhood type of store, but with lots of travelers as well, whether they're tourists or business travelers and all that. The Heathrow store would be more of a true neighborhood type of store, but they're all in settings where there's high-end restaurants and good things around them. So, but they definitely have their own identity. Which one is? I mean, it just depends on which one people feel. Some people, Bear, it's interesting. Some people feel comfortable in a downtown setting. Some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
You get downtowns are different, right? But that's sometimes what makes it exciting for people.
Right.
Whereas, you get to the neighborhood, it's more like a suburban environment. And Tampa's that's a great location too. So they're all different for sure. But
would you say
every one of them, it's like your arm and your leg and your foot, whatever.
Right. Would you say that Tampa and downtown have a similar vibe to them? Because I mean, those are the two that I've been to. I've been to Tampa and I've been to Sand Lake, and I mean, two very, very different stores. But fantastic experience in both of them, but very, very different.
Yeah, but Tampa's not in an urban setting as well. Mm-hmm. So downtown Orlando is like you got to park in a garage, and there's no parking on the street. There's no parking lot in front of it. You know what I mean? It's a downtown setting. So no, those two are different. But hey, we're all in Florida where we got some freedom. So that's the great part too.
Right. Absolutely. So which one's the smallest?
Heathrow.
Okay. It's one I haven't been to. I need to check that out. And then you said downtown's larger than Sound Lake. So what is Tampa the biggest one?
Tampa and downtown are about the same.
About the same.
Yep.
Now, and they all have that similar style, right? There's no walk-in humidor in all of them. That the shop is the humidor. You walk in and the cigars are there, right? I love it. I love that. It was so awesome. I mean, just walk in and there's cigars. I mean, it's just
cigars everywhere, aisles and aisles of cigars. That's the idea.
Perfect. We'll go into our next, what I call our next fun segment here, Jeff. And this has been something that I've done on every show since my birthday of 2 years ago. So we've been doing it for about 15 months or so. And it's been really fantastic because we get to talk about some great organizations, great nonprofits and charities. And so each week I ask my guests to spotlight a charity or nonprofit of their choosing. And you chose a definite first for this show. And I'm really excited to talk about this. You chose forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, but the Bahia Shriners as the organization that you wanted to spotlight and talk about. So I'll give you the floor a little bit here, Jeff. Why did you decide to talk about this particular charity and nonprofit?
Well, I'm a Shriner. I'm a Mason. I did that last year, and I've been supporting the local. It's called the Bahia Shrine, which is the Orlando chapter, let's call it, of the Shriners. The Shriners are everywhere. They're globally, but and their big things is Shriners Hospital for Children, and they've had special burn units. You've seen the TV commercials probably, and kids that have like degenerative bone disease and problems like that. So the Shriners is real simple, man. You got a sick kid, they'll take care of them, and you don't have to worry about whether you have to pay for it. That's not even an equation. So first time we did cigars and cars, actually, we held it at the not the first time, but 3 years later, we started holding it at the Shriners. Had a big it's called a convention hall, and I they had this big band playing, and I noticed most of these Shriners were very old, and I'm like, wow, this organization is going to die out, man. These guys are getting old; they're aging out. And when I was a kid, my dad's best friend was a big time in the Shrine, and they just always had, this Shriners Hospital's been around a while, and I just felt like, you got to pass the baton in life, and I think something so good as the Shriners, it needs to be supported. And then I had a friend of mine I grew up with. His son had a bone growth problem, and he had like 14 different surgeries done by the Shriners, and they paid for all of it. And so when you see charities and you actually see where the money goes, and people actually have benefited from it, it really makes you feel confident that the work that you put in to try and raise the money for these guys, it's going for what it's intended to do. So that's why the Shriners is important to me, and there's definitely a need for this. How many parents have worry about if something goes wrong with a kid. It's bad enough you've got the stress of worrying about the health of your child, but then having in the back of your mind, how am I going to pay for it? That's a double whammy. So at least with the Shriners, you don't have to worry about that. So that's the charity of choice. We've done quite a few events where we raise money for them, and you see the TV commercials for the Shriners Hospital for Children. If you could, people support it, because I can tell you there's a lot of charities out there where only a small portion actually goes to what you think it goes to. The rest goes to salaries and overhead and all sorts of kind of stuff. Well, the Shriners, that money actually goes to help kids. So and not only that, just even a local thing. This Christmas, there's a town, a real rural town in Florida. It's very poor community, and every year, man, for the last 25, 30 years, they have this thing for Christmas at their community center, and the Shriners do all kinds of stuff. The guys give motorcycle rides. They get the camel out there. They got the kids get to come in. This you should see the look on these kids' face. They walk into this hall, and there's thousands of presents, and they just get to walk, and they get to pick like 3 presents, and then they go, and when they leave, they get a new toothbrush and toothpaste and some other stuff, and it's like it's really cool to see, and that these kids smiling ear to ear, and especially like when they get a motorcycle ride. Cool it is to be like 6 years old, be on the back of a Harley and stuff, and Santa Claus is there, and it's like, wow, this is like as grassroots local yokel as you can get. But that's what it's all about. We've got to. This is an interesting topic too, Bear. Do you know that the more people I talk to that are actually involved in benevolence in running charities, do you know that there's less and less giving? That it seems like there's a generational gap where people are not giving as much to charities as they used to, which I find to be kind of interesting. And I don't know whether it's the sort of the world revolves around me mentality. I don't know, but we need to make sure that whatever it is, we got to do some charity. It's part of the circle of life. So and it doesn't have to be money either. You know what I'm saying? My kids are in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and stuff, and FFA and stuff, and they all in ROTC, all those type of programs. They always have some kind of charity component to it, or community service. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Helping out in the community. So it's not a matter of hey, I can't afford it, because, it doesn't cost anything to go out and, for Boy Scouts to clean up a park or a beach or something. But I'm telling you, I don't know whether it's just because the next generation is so tied into, social media and just staring at their phones all day, and they're not actually helping with some of the charity things that need to be done. But I'm hearing this from people running those type of organizations, that there's a generational decline in charitable giving and charitable service, which it's not good for humanity. So anyway, so I'm preaching to people out there, just, do what you can. Remember, there's it takes a village to take care of humanity, and that's the way it used to be. So we got to try to kind of get back to that a little bit.
Jeff, the reason I said this was an interesting choice is, like I said, it's the first time the Shriners has been brought up on this show, and my grandfather was a Shriner too, and it was something he just did for, according to my dad, he just did it for fun. He always used to joke around that he did it for the hat, because he loved it. But I mean, it's more than just hats. It's more than just the funny cars and parades and stuff like that. I mean, there's 22 hospitals for children around this country, and actually in Canada, and they have one in Mexico too.
Yep.
And there's one right there in Florida. I think it's right in your backyard. So
in Tampa.
And they do incredible work, like you said. St. Jude is a great hospital. They do great work with children too, but it's one, essentially one location. This is 22. And I'm not trying to knock St. Jude, so don't take it that way. I'm just saying, but this is.
Well, hold on. Let me bring up some. This is interesting. Let me bring this up too.
Cool.
So St. Jude will not accept money from cigar related or tobacco related companies. So just to let you know.
Yeah.
So the Shriners, not only will they these guys embrace the cigar culture. The Shriners here have a cigar club. They meet once a month, and then you'll see them. They'll show up. They'll be at cigar stores and stuff. There'll be 10, 15 Shriners that are smoking cigars. So they welcome the cigar culture because they're guys like us. What I'm saying? That's who Shriners are. So they're not the what should I say? Goody two shoes is not the correct adjective, but they're not the type to say, oh,
they're not too good for they're not snobs. They're not too good for the money.
Yeah. What I'm saying? So like I said, so that and for me is a big plus too, because they are these guys are genuine guys, and they're like, dude, we enjoy cigars, and we also want to help kids.
No, absolutely. I think, and I don't want to pick on St. Jude necessarily or anything like that, but they're not the only ones.
No.
Liana Fuente ran into this issue. She ran into an issue
where
she'd been donating for years to breast cancer because it was an issue that's very near and dear to her heart. And when they found out that the money was coming from, the Rare Pinks project was going to come from, cigar related sales, they backed off. And I think sometimes having a moral objection to something is important. I think just like the Hippocratic Oath, I think that is something that should be that time and money should transcend that, just like the Hippocratic Oath does. These doctors take an oath to do no harm and to help those in need, and that's what your funds do. With these donations to the Shriners hospitals or any hospital or any medical, any of these charities that we've talked about over the years here on this show, or and ones that we haven't talked about. So I think we kind of had an epiphany here on the show, Jeff. You were talking about how we've seen this kind of generational disconnect about charitable giving and charitable service taking a downfall. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's not the reason, but I mean, that's certainly a factor. I mean, people being too good for the money and where it comes from.
So the thing about the Rare Pinks when it came out, I kind of knew that was going to happen because and also I'm not even a fan of that charity, by the way. The was it Susan J. Korma or whatever it is, because I've known quite a few women that have breast cancer, and it's have them call up and try and get some help. You'll be lucky if they do. So what I did when the rare pinks came out, we got like 10 boxes. Now that's for 5 stores.
Right.
So that's 2 boxes store. That's 50 cigars. Not matter of fact, they're not even boxes of 25. It's 35 cigars per store. Now I knew that as soon as you put them out at the retail price they had, that regardless even what price they had, that they were going to sell out that day.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why do this? Let's put them out $50 a stick, and we're going to donate $5,000 from us to breast cancer. Now, what I did, I did it real is I went online, I Googled in Orlando. I said, Orlando free mammograms is what I put in a search term. And then I looked at which places, and I started looking who offers free mammograms. That's where I wrote the check to. And you know what else pops up as a good charity too? Ronald McDonald House.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's one called Russell Home. So there's certain ones that literally you give them money. These are the people that if you have a problem, Ronald McDonald's House, and if your kid's in the hospital, they house the parents. Because people have to travel sometimes when their kids in the hospital. So Ronald McDonald's House, another one where the money actually goes to people that are in need. And the Russell Home, that's in Orlando. I think they're in others too. But and there's a couple others. So that's where I wrote the check to. And that was when we get another shipment of rare pinks, we'll do it again, another $5,000 to them. So that we can I know that's going to help people. And why sell the cigar at whatever $13 or even whatever they're supposed to be? Let's sell them for $50 and let's make some money for a charity for what it should be. So that's how we kind of leverage that. And that's ways that retailers can think of how do you help your own local community off of 10 boxes of cigars. I mean, most stores got 2 boxes, right? So again, that's 2 boxes for each location, but we got 5, so 5 locations. So that was cool. So anytime you can leverage something for the good, those are opportunities that are worth doing.
It's really exciting, Jeff. Great work, and really great work with the Shriners as well. As always, every week, my wife and I will make a small donation in your honor towards the Shriners hospitals.
Cool.
So that'll be made. We've made a pledge to donate to each charity each week, and we're still going strong. It's not much, but every little bit counts. And
so Barry, you never know, and this is what's interesting. 10 years from now, you may have a buddy from high school or something that his kid you'll find out that, hey, he ended up going to a Shriners hospital. I'm telling you, as you get older, there's like there's karma that goes on. That's at least that's what I've found. So I didn't know about this guy that was 16 years old working with, that I was probably 40 years old before I knew that his son had gone through that, was going through that actually. And so, you never know. So just, I think the karma is real.
Absolutely. So check it out. I posted it in the chat, and then it'll also be in the show notes later. Check out the Bahia Shriners website, and then you can also make a donation if you feel so called. Really encourage you all to do so. They do some terrific work. And Jeff, thanks again for bringing this up today. Really excited that we got to talk about it. So fantastic.
So Shriners Hospital for Children is where I think you make the donations.
Correct. Yeah, it's a link right off of it the Bahia website, and it goes directly to the Shriners hospitals. So and you can learn more about the locations of the different Shriners hospitals and some other. There's some really great information. It's a fantastic website. It's really, really well done. So so kind of diving back in here to a couple of other items here, Jeff, before we call it a night. Now, this topic has kind of been beat up a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but I thought it'd be interesting to get a retailer perspective on this. So the PCA comes out with a statement about responsible marketing. and there's been several different types of reactions. I'm not going to tell you mine if you haven't heard it yet, in particular, but I thought it was a very, I thought it was a positive thing in a lot of ways. But you're a retailer and you're a capitalist, and you're in the business to make money. But we talked about certain moral responsibilities and everything. What did you have a chance to review that statement, and what were some of your initial thoughts, and how does that particularly affect your practice as a retailer?
So I'm glad they did it, but this isn't the first time we've come across some marketing that's like, you're like, come on, guys. This is especially when there was much more scrutiny on packaging, because when we were lobbying up in Washington, D.C. about why premium cigars shouldn't be treated like cigarettes when it comes to the FDA. FDA has lots of rules on marketing. You got warning labels, where it can be advertised, where it can't. And, if those were applied to cigars, it really becomes problematic, especially on the warning labels, because we produce a catalog, and based on the way it was written, it's like every single page would have to have 1/3 of the page would be a damn ad saying, with a Surgeon General's warning. So we're like, we don't market to kids. Our product's not attractive to kids. Premium cigars are enjoyed by adults. Well, trust me, you got opposition groups that if they do their research, you don't want them to pull up images and go to those same, whether it's FDA officials that you're talking to, or people in Congress that are involved in the rules for the Health and Human Services, or FDA. You don't want them pulling up an ad saying, you guys say you don't market to kids, but here you got one that looks like the Cookie Monster or something like that, and it's a cartoon character. So we don't want to give them ammunition to use against us, because even if it had a Cookie Monster on the box, kids aren't going to go in a cigar shop and go buy a box of premium cigars. I don't care what it's got on it, but it doesn't matter. It's lost in translation. It's an argument to use against us, and you can't defend it. So I think it was smart for PCA to try and give some guidance there, because I know, listen, people are trying to be creative, and here's what happens too, is that every 10 years you have a new wave of guys entering the cigar business. And what happens is that somebody that's entering in 2022 wasn't there in 2012 when we're, having to lobby and really, just sit there and try and educate as many people as we can at the FDA and members of Congress of why we're different. So you got to keep that new generation coming in. They need to learn the history of where the landmines are in this business. And so, it was real smart on the PCA to do that. I personally didn't see a lot of back and forth discussion about it. I read some of the threads on Facebook, and there were some retailers that were quite vocal. I saw them being quite vocal. Hey, we can't. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Meaning, why are manufacturers coming out with these comic books type of designs or names? So the PCA did the right thing, and I don't think any manufacturer that has done that has done it with ill intent. But you just got to educate them on where we've gone. Some of these guys weren't even born when Joe Camel. This all stems to the Joe Camel campaign. So you may have guys coming. You may have guys coming out with cigars now who weren't even alive when Joe Camel was part of the marketing. And so, but that is what they use. That's the main hook that they put out there is, Joe Camel was marketing cigarettes to kids. So when you look at a design of what, the cartoon character of Joe Camel, and then you got a band that has, same type of, whatever cartoon character, whatever, that's a problem. So it's all about educating and making sure that, listen, you guys are creative. Just make sure it's adult oriented when you do your creative designs or marketing, whatever. That's all.
So back to our theme tonight of advice. What would your advice be to a fellow retailer that came to you and said, Jeff, should I carry these types of cigars in my store or not?
I wouldn't, because you're given, don't forget, man, all politics is local. You trust me, there's these tobacco-free kid groups out there that are, heck, they can be a high school chapter. They do that. And so you don't want them having that stuff in your store, because just because, Washington, D.C. might be a long way away from you, you just don't want to be part of that. You don't want to be on that Facebook group of tobacco-free kids saying, look at what I found at Uncle Tim's cigar shop or whatever. You don't want it. So I wouldn't carry any of that stuff.
So there was some thoughts on the fact that the statement that was made was not harsh enough. There was some language in there about being encouraging other manufacturers to not participate in this type of marketing and everything. There was just some thoughts on that, and I personally, just for full transparency, Jeff, I thought that there was some language in there. Now I think it's a matter of discussion and debate, and there's some reasons why the PCA had to do it that way, and you can either agree or disagree. But do you think it's the PCA's job to make this, I guess, stance, and then it's the obligation of its members to take it on as their mission to protect it, in sense of not being able to carry like some of these products and putting themselves in the crosshairs and everything? Or do you think that by some of this language not being as direct as maybe it could have been, that gives some retailers some hesitancy about whether or not they should or shouldn't carry the product?
So I think the real thing is that, PCA, when I read it, I knew what they were talking about, but I'm real close to these issues, right? But at the same time, some people really need to be like shown. Here's an example, but PCA can't do that. They can't grab somebody's brands or marketing and say, here, this is an example that we shouldn't use, right?
No, that's true.
So, so I think they got their message across. And again, any retailer that is a good business guy, he doesn't want to bring trouble to a store, right? So if it's just an educational thing. If they were aware of what was going, the risks that are there and why we don't want to do it, it's just a matter of educating our own retailers and manufacturers. And again, has a lot to do with the newer generation of them that just weren't there for those problems before. So, and it is definitely 100% part of the role of the PCA to identify those issues and call it out when there's a problem, because that they're supposed to be leaders in what we call best management or best marketing practices. So that's why it is their duty to do that. So they did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I was saying about being a little bit more direct, I wasn't necessarily asking them to name names. I thought that would be irresponsible, especially if some of these manufacturers aren't even aware, or some of these brand owners aren't even aware of what they're doing is wrong. Like you said, some of them weren't even around for the whole Joe Camel incident, and they don't know anything, right. And it's about education. But I thought it was the mixed language in some of the sentences. Like, for example, like in their statement, they say, therefore, it's incumbent upon us all to not only exercise common sense, discretion, responsibility, at times restraint instead of restraint. I know, like, I'm nitpicking and I'm going through language, but if we're going to take a strong stance on something, just say restraint. We need to show restraint on this. So those are kind of the things about being direct or indirect. And I understand about not naming names, like you said, that I think that does more harm than good. So I think that was responsible of them. I just thought that some of their language could have been a lot more direct, a lot more specific, and a lot more, I guess, just firm is probably the best word that I'm thinking.
I think people got the point. If anything, it's you just got to make sure the message got out as far as it should, and every manufacturer should really have that. For example, if you got a factory, right? And this one guy comes in and says, hey, I want you to make this brand for me. And here's what it looks like, man. And they see the bands, or let's look at the packaging and what it's going to look like. They should know too, hey, we can't do that. We got to, redesign this so it doesn't look like it's geared so much towards kids. That's all. So really, remember, there's not that many guys make cigars, right? But there's a ton of people, retailers or guys that are quote brand owners or whatever. But at the end of the day, that there's only, I don't know, 50 factories out there, maybe less than 100. I would say there's probably less than 100 cigar factories in this business. Maybe I'm wrong, but
no, I think that's a pretty accurate number.
Yeah,
I think that even might be a little heavy.
Yeah. So as long as they know, they can stop it from starting in the first place.
There you go. So you mentioned about back in 2012, and your story journey into politics has been pretty well documented by yourself, and you've done a terrific job being an ambassador for this industry, really fighting for not just yourself, but the industry as a whole. And you've been a part of some great panels and some great discussions, and you've gone up to Washington several times, and you even you co-founded the CRA. So one thing that it was an interesting post that you had done right after he passed away. And then there was actually, I heard there was a story behind it too, which was when Harry Reid passed away. And this is a gentleman that you actually had the opportunity to meet with, and no secret, you, politically speaking, the two of you are on different sides of the aisle. So I was hoping you could recant that story about the time that you met Harry Reid, because he for a long time he served this country in a very long capacity in the Senate, and I thought your story was a really refreshing perspective.
So Harry Reid was the Senate president, or the majority leader. So basically the Chuck Schumer of today. Harry Reid was in that position before. And listen, these guys give speeches. They're always very politically, taking in the opposite side of whatever the Republicans are doing. But at the end of the day, the cigars. One of the things about our premium cigar bill, which was to basically have where premium cigars are not regulated by the FDA. It was always bipartisan, and so many times we would hear that, well, if you can get let's say whatever, this far right conservative politician and this far left politician on the same bill, it must be a good bill. Meaning that, how did you get both of those guys to agree? Because there's hardly anything about the only thing that goes through Congress that's bipartisan is just like naming a post office or something that's not controversial at all. But on pretty much on anything else, it's almost like there's party lines. So in our bill, it was always bipartisan, but way more Republican support than Democrat support, just because the nature of Republicans being more conservative and Democrats liking big government regulations. So Harry Reid, I think the biggest message to give people is that, I was able to get in Harry Reid's office by myself, not as a lobbyist, just as someone that was up in DC trying to prevent Corona Cigar from going out of business from something called the State Children's Insurance Program. It was a federal increase on the cigar tax from 5 cents, and at the time was up to $10 per cigar with a floor tax, which would have put me out of business. So anyway, I'm up there just knocking on doors, and Harry Reid's the top of the food chain for Democrats. And so I went in there and my business card and asked for a meeting. I asked for a meeting with Senator Reid himself. I didn't know. Listen, you won't get it if you don't ask. So yeah, I asked if I could meet with Harry Reid, and they're like, "What are you here for?" And so I explained, it's usually like an intern from college that's the gatekeeper, right? So I handed my business card, told him what I was there for, and again, wasn't with a lobbyist. So a few hours later, I get a phone call from his chief of staff saying, "Hey, why don't you stop by today and let's go over this?" And I did. And then later on, how
surprised were you that you got that call? How surprised were you?
I was real surprised. But his chief of staff actually smoked cigars, so he knew about cigars. So Rocky Patel was up there. This was back when Dave Burkebile was in charge of it was called the RTDA back then. So anyway, this was a long time ago. Again, 2007, I think. So anyway, later we met with him. The guy said the reason he took the meeting, he goes because it was an individual coming up from outside of DC, made the trip to discuss an issue that was important enough for him to leave his home state, home city, travel up there to tell him a problem. And this was a seasoned chief of staff, by the way. A lot of your political staff are very young. When I say young, you would be shocked when you see these bills that are 6, 8, 10, 15,000 pages. They're written by people that are 24 years old. Now, there's nothing against the 24-year-old. However, when you're 24 years old, your time on earth and experience on things is short. And that's why we have so many what are called unintended consequences. Because trust me, the guys who were writing a cigar tax bill had no clue about premium cigars. And we had no representation back then too. So the cigarette guys pretty much wrote their bill. And then when they needed more tax, they just kind of went down the categories and cigars were last. So we got a big hit. So anyway, Harry Reid's chief of staff is an older guy. And he said, that's the reason I took the meeting, because it's obviously there's something in that bill that's wrong that has a retailer or a business guy coming up here, a small business guy too, and it's not IBM. It's not Lockheed Martin. This is Corona Cigar Company right out of Orlando. He comes up here and he wants to tell what's wrong. So that's when a good chief of staff or a good staff member will make sure they take that meeting, because number one, let's hear what's wrong, because they don't intentionally want to have unintended consequences, right? And number two, they like to talk to the business owners more so than they like to talk to lobbyists, because lobbyists can arrange the meeting, but lobbyists don't know the ins and outs of the business. And lobbyists a lot of times are talking off of talking points. When you have the business owner there, I don't care if it's a cattleman or a mechanic or whatever, he's the expert in the industry. And so they have questions when they're talking back and forth. They feel they're getting truth. They're getting true statements from, right? And that's what they really want to hear. They want to hear from the guy, whatever his industry, his business is, he wants to hear. And it's not all business either. That's why you'll see parents or individuals that can actually make changes in policy, like when their daughter gets killed by, I don't know, whatever. Let's say some stolen car came up from Mexico, killed their daughter on there. That parent that goes to Congress and says, listen, this could have been prevented if this, and I lost my daughter over this. That story is more compelling. And then they're like, man, I feel bad for them. What happened? What can we do to fix this? Or, hey, my child was damaged by a drug here that you guys are still selling. The FDA has approved it. Now, look at this is how change actually happens, So it's not just business, but it's individuals. And so my point is that you can't and this is the bad part, Bear. This is what's so disappointing. What we did in 2007 through 2021 is not, or 2020, you can't do anymore. You know why? Because neither one of us can go walk in the halls of Congress anymore. We can't even walk into the buildings where their offices are, Rayburn and all these other Senate buildings, Hart buildings and stuff like that. In the past, you go through the metal detectors, boom, you can literally walk down the halls to every member of Congress's office and say, hey, I want to talk to you about this. You can do what we call drop-by meetings. Can't do that anymore. It's sealed off. And they're saying, because of the insurrection on January 6th, therefore, we're going to close Washington, D.C. off to the citizens. And this is what's happening. And this is why it's real dangerous, because you know who has access to Congress now? The millionaires, billionaires, and lobbyists that represent the big companies, the Fortune 500 companies. Mm-hmm. That's who has access. The average citizen right now has zero access in D.C. You can't get in. If you get a meeting with your congressman, they literally got to walk you in. And then when you're done, they got to walk you out. And that's not the way the government it was supposed to be the people's house. Mm-hmm. But by design, it's sealed off right now. So when they do a bill right now, it's got 5, 6, 7,000 pages on it. Not one average Joe had any input on it. None. And so that's what's real dangerous right now. So anyway, and again, it's by design. That way they can anyway, we can spend another show on this, but anyway.
So with these limitations and everything like that, like you said, it doesn't work like this anymore, unfortunately. I know your advice would be to always just ask for the meeting. What do you think we can do now? I mean, emails and phone calls. I mean, is that going to really do the trick?
Well, it helps, and the reason it helps is it's sheer numbers. What they do when you send emails and phone calls, they don't read them. But what they do is they put it in the pile of opposition. How many calls do we get that are against something? How many are for it? So they don't like too much controversy. So if you start seeing it bubbling up, especially from people in their district, they might back off a little bit. But the real way to get this done is be involved in local politics. You got to have a relationship with your Senate office, because for example, if in the state of Florida, Marco Rubio, our senator, his downtown Orlando office is literally next building over from Corona Cigar downtown. So now his staff members know what Corona Cigar is. So when you're talking to them about stuff, they know who we are, right? That's why anytime, like when we had the official Senate hearings in Tampa, it's me and Eric Newman and others, and we're part of that conversation. So when they're looking for experts, they call me and others, and that's because we were very active in it. Same thing on local politics, state level politics. You've got to be involved, because I say it 100 times, man. You're either at the table or you're on the menu. And trust me, you don't want to be on the menu. And being in the cigar business, you're already on the menu, no matter what, whether it's regulation, taxes, and smoking bans or whatever. I mean, we're fighting one right now in Florida. And if I didn't have, sometimes you got to develop these relationships for years. And you think, why am I doing this? Why am I supporting this guy? Why do I do this? Because there's going to be a time when you need them. And that time is usually when there's a bill that some group wrote that's going to put you out of business. So you better make sure that you can have access to the person, that you can text them or call them, say, hey, check out this House Bill 205. It's a problem. This is the Pandora's box that's going to allow, smoking bans where we can't smoke outside anymore, or could cause cigar bars to go away. So that's why you gotta stay on top of it. And local politics is, that's, everybody can access that. DC right now is closed off, but you can everybody can access the local stuff.
Absolutely. Really, really fantastic stuff there, Jeff. I think that the most important thing is just to keep trying and to keep pushing and having these conversations with our leaders, in any way, form, or possible. And like you said, I think it's really quite touching and quite moving that to the Senate Majority Leader at the time took the meeting simply because you were an individual and not because you were represented by someone, for all the, and there's plenty of it, right? In politics, there's money goes a long way in politics. If you've got a name brands behind you, it's going to get you an appointment. Don't get me wrong, but it's still, it's great that story exists, so that, the next time you do meet with the leaders of today, you can actually tell it. I mean, because
don't get me wrong though, there's it's a political machine though.
Sure,
it'll get you in the door, but there's a need for the lobbyists, because that's what keeps your message from being forgotten once you leave. You follow me?
Sure.
So you have to have the lobbyists there to carry the message on and continue with the communication with the staff. So lobbyists are absolutely essential. But what I'm getting at is that you can listen. Lobbyists without their clients is some of them do it, but it's not very effective. You follow me? It's a dance. You got to have a dance partner, right? So unless you're there helping them, or actually telling the story, they can provide access, but they need the actual clients there, which in this case is retailers and cigar makers, to tell that story, because that's where, without it, they're just reading the talking point. And trust me, those go right in the trash when you leave, because as soon as you leave, someone else will bring one. Think of how many packets they get a day.
Right.
You spend a day at a congressional office. Yeah. Spend a day in a political office and you'll be like, holy smokes, I had no idea that they got to deal with this many issues. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I mean, you name it, every industry's got an issue that the government's involved in. So it's just nonstop. So again, that's why the lobbyists are important. So when you leave, your packet just doesn't go in the trash and then they forget about you. There has to be continued communication and advocacy.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, Jeff, I know you got a little early morning today, so I will go ahead and conclude the show with our curveball segment. And as always, I do really appreciate your time on a Sunday evening. I know this is family time, and like you said, you got a really early morning, so I really do appreciate.
The kids are in bed already. It's just that, yeah,
they should be, right?
Yeah, they're already in bed. Yep.
So our curveball segment is always brought to you by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Fastballs or curveballs, doesn't matter since the company's inception. Steve Sock has been knocking them out of the park. 7 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to Steve and Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. So here's the question, Jeff. We talked a little bit earlier around the show about the locations that you have. You've got 4 stores now. So I'm not going to ask you if a 5th one is on the horizon. In fact, we're going to just have a little bit of a make-believe. If you went out of the state of Florida, okay, there's 2 parts to this question. If you could open a cigar shop anywhere in this country, outside the state of Florida, and money wasn't an object, I handed you everything you needed to open a store, where would you open it?
It'd probably be somewhere in Texas, just because there's a lot of people moving to Florida and Texas. Texas has a pretty good cigar environment as far as like taxes and things go. So I would say somewhere in Texas. But we are opening another store. I got one going in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, so, wow. Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah, we got a public hearing that we got to do next month. Good example. We do have some anti-tobacco people fighting it. Unfortunately, there's some people that don't think that you should be able to have a cigar store if people smoking cigars outside. So that's when I talk about all politics, man. It can be local all the way to the top. So we just got one more city council meeting to go through, and hopefully we'll have the green light and get that thing starting to build it. Fantastic. But so that's the other. I think Texas is plus you guys got a good climate there, so that would be the second thing. You know what other state's really good? Forget the political climate though, but California is a great state to smoke a cigar. They've got great weather. Like San Diego is beautiful for smoking cigars, but obviously they got problems as far as taxation and regulation, things like that. But I don't want to say I feel bad for the retailers up north, but when you live in these areas that get 2 feet of snow and it's freezing cold, it's not that easy to smoke cigars, right? Right. So California, believe it or not, is a good state. Has a great climate for smoking cigars. So does Hawaii, and Hawaii is another state that's terrible on. Beat the heck out of their retailers.
You're gonna have to be 100. You're gonna have to be 100 to smoke a cigar.
I know it's ridiculous. but Hawaii, and California, Florida, Texas, any of the southern states, they're great places to enjoy cigars, and we call it cigar moments, right? So when people go to the beach or go to a park or stuff like that, these are great places to smoke a cigar. So anyway, probably Texas.
Well, thanks for picking my home state, Jeff. That makes me feel good. So if all goes well in that hearing, what's the scheduled completion date for Sarasota? Is that 2023, 2024, or?
No, it should be this year.
Oh, wow.
There's challenges in this supply. Well, we are actually designed the store last year. We've been dealing with, nothing clogs up progress as much as local government right now. That's why, during COVID, a lot of the rest of society was out there working, but a lot of the government offices were closed, and so you try to get a permit done, they're still getting paid, but nobody was working, or licensing and stuff like that. So that's why you'll see a lot of projects like in Florida where it's like, oh, they did the demolition, but when's the new restaurant coming in? Well, whenever they give them the permits, and so unfortunately that has really slowed up a lot of things in this state, but it is what it is.
Will it be a freestanding building, or will it be part of like a?
It's half of one freestanding building. It's in downtown Sarasota, right off of Main Street. So it's a beautiful location. And Sarasota is a great city too. So we're looking forward to that. But I'm hoping it'll be open. It should be open in 2022. But again, you never know. We have very specialized air conditioning units that we use for HVAC. You can get something that normally would take 6 months to have built could take a year. So I hope we don't run into that, but you never know.
So I said this is a two-parter. Last question, Jeff. Same thing goes. I'll give you all the money, all the resources in the world to make it happen. So anywhere in the world, outside this country, where do you open a cigar store?
Outside the country. That's a good one. The only it's hard. There's demand for it in the UK, but there's some tough regulations there. And Spain has a good culture too for smoking cigars. I think we could do good in Madrid. I'm sorry, in Barcelona. I'd probably do one there.
Nice. I love Barcelona. It's a beautiful city.
Yeah, and I think that's a good climate too for cigars. So I think that and I don't recall there being a great cigar store there. So if there's anybody from Spain, who knows? But I think the stores in Spain are controlled by. I think there's something that I don't know about that. But anyway, yeah, I'd be able to kick ass one in Barcelona.
There you go. Nice. Barcelona and Texas.
Yep.
So all right. But in reality, Sarasota is the next one on the list. So
yes,
good luck with that, Jeff.
Happened.
Good luck with that, Jeff, and everything as well.
You.
Thank you so much to my audience for tuning in tonight and staying with us late, as always. Fantastic conversation with our guest here tonight, Jeff Borysiewicz, and really do appreciate everyone for tuning in. Check out our YouTube page, ELOSOFUMAR, as well as our Facebook page, ELOSOFUMAR. Don't forget to hit the like button. You can always see a calendar of upcoming events every week. We'll be doing shows, except for this week. I will actually be at the Great Smoke in the great state of Florida. So I'll be coming to the Sunshine State, Jeff. And so I won't be doing a show per se, but we do have Nick Melillo coming on the week after that. So that'll be a great take. It'll be his second appearance on ELOSOFUMARTAKES. We're going to be drinking tequila that night. So that'll be exciting, along with smoking some fine cigars too. So you definitely want to check that out. And always, if you are downloading these podcasts later, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure you hit the download, subscribe, and review button. If you are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit unsubscribe, but don't forget to resubscribe because that really helps my numbers. So really appreciate that. Appreciate Jeff for joining us tonight. And as always, we really appreciate all your likes, shares, and comments. For everyone out there, I'm Bear Duplessis live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. He's Jeff Borysiewicz. Guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.